People spend a part of every day preparing and eating food, but not all food that's made gets eaten. According to the USDA, about 21.4% of all waste that ends up in landfills is from food. That's about 430 pounds per person in the US. A great way to keep food out of the landfills is by composting. Composting is a process where food scraps and organic waste get broken into soil. An easy way for small homes and apartments to do that is a process of working with worms called vermicomposting. Vermicompost is a specific form of composting, using worms to break up decaying organic matter like fruit and vegetable leftovers. It can be used to grow new food as it is turned back into healthy, nutrient-filled soil. There are many organizations locally who have a gardening focus. The WSU Whatcom Extension Master Gardeners are one of those groups focused on education and getting people interested in worms and soil.
My name's Beth Chisholm, and I'm with the WSU Whatcom County Extension Office here in Bellingham. So when you use worm composting, it's a great method to use in an indoor space. A lot of times composting is done outside in the garden setting, but worm bins are super great because they're something you can do indoors. I think the most interesting thing for me has been doing this for a while is that the how people they think they're afraid of worms, and then once they start interacting with a worm bin and knowing what the worms are doing, that they're actually decomposing food waste, they start to get just fascinated about it, and they find it just so intriguing, especially kids, but adults too. Adults can be pretty squeamish, and once they put their food waste into their bin and bury it, and then they come back a few days later and see that it's gone, they're just in awe of it, and then they have this newfound relationship with the worms, and they become, I think, infatuated with them. It's a little bit like magic.
Someone who has really become knowledgeable of this magic is Paige Landham, a Huxley graduate working at the Garden Stop Nursery and a WSU Extension Master Composter volunteer.
The most interesting thing that I think I've learned is the fact that worms don't actually eat food. They're not actually eating the food that we put in our bins. It's actually the bacteria and the fungus that are breaking those things down, and they're just eating bacteria and fungus. Basically, you have the shredders. The shredders are the insects that we see all the time, like beetles, roly-polies, earwigs, and these guys are breaking things down at the surface of the soil. So they're just breaking apart dead organic material so that bacteria and fungus can come along and break that down further. And so then they are taking all of the nutrients that were present in the dead organic material. It is sort of encased in their bodies, and it's not available to plants at that time. Then their predators come along. So those are things like protozoa, nematodes, and earthworms. So they'll come along and they eat the bacteria and the fungus. So at that point, plants are able to access those nutrients, and the process just sort of starts all over again. Yeah, it's a specific kind of worm that's in our compost bins. It's a litter worm. So these are red wigglers, and there are kind of three basic types of worms. There are things like night crawlers, which are deep underground, like 6 feet underground in the soil. And then there are the worms that we see commonly in the garden. So those are the worms that you would be scooping out of the garden. Those live in about the first foot of soil, and they're mostly eating, they're actually processing a lot of soil. They wouldn't be efficient at processing food waste. So the reason why we choose red wigglers to be candidates for our worm bins is because they reproduce the fastest and they process food the fastest. So those are the worms that we really want in our bins.
So that was the science of how bins work. Here's the list of supplies you need to build your own. Creating a compost bin. First step is to find a suitable container, either a plastic bin or a container made of non-treated wood. If you happen to go the plastic bin route, make sure you drill holes to allow for air and drainage. For bedding, old mail or paper that's been shredded into strips can be used. Small pieces of cardboard are also alright. Finally, get your worms. A good way to estimate how many worms you need is to weigh how much food waste you had in a week. Worms can consume up to a pound in a day. So that means if you have a pound of waste each day, you would be good with 1 pound of worms. And the red wigglers reproduce quickly, so you don't have to worry about buying new worms over and over. Putting it all together. If you're using a plastic bin, make sure to add in air holes for your worms along the tops and sides of the bin. A Dremel, drill, or hammer and nail all work well for this job. The bottom layer will be the bedding. That can be a mix of worm castings, some decomposing organic matter, and your worms. Next, add in some food for the worms. Some examples of this are strawberries, peppers, potatoes, or eggshells. Finally, add on either shredded paper, cardboard, or both. Dampen them with water before adding the layer in the bin. It only needs to be a couple inches thick. And that's it. Final thing to remember is that there are many resources in the community, from Western's campus to nonprofits around town. And that's the breakdown on vermicomposting.
Vermicompost is a specific form of composting.
Using worms to break up decaying organic matter like fruit and vegetable leftovers.
It can be used to grow new food, as it is turned back into healthy, nutrient-filled soil.
'Cause I'm a man.